For the Garudas, this has been quite an exceptional international season for them. From the Asian Cup finals in Qatar early this year to a return to Doha for the Under-23 Asian Cup finals, which also double up as the final qualifiers for the Olympics men's football tournament in Paris later that year. This journey has been nothing short of incredible. If you are an Indonesian football fan, 2024 is definitely the year to remember. A year of exceptional highlights, incredible achievements, and new milestones attained for the men's and women's national teams, especially for those who have been supporting South Korea head coach Shin Tae-yong, who has managed both the Garudas as well as the men's under-23. What a year it has been. Take away the rather disappointing ASEAN Championship where they exited the group stage, where you can say that this is really an experimental, almost all local born side with many who are playing international football for the first time. Otherwise, for the Garudas, this has been quite an exceptional international season for them. From the Asian Cup finals in Qatar early this year to a return to Doha for the Under-23 Asian Cup finals, which also double up as the final qualifiers for the Olympics men's football tournament in Paris later that year. This journey has been nothing short of incredible. And where do we begin with that wonderful journey that the Garudas have brought to the fans back at home and to the Asian supporters who are watching with wonder, and you can say really maybe bewilderment, maybe it's really amazement, actually more accurately amazement at the progress the Garudas have achieved internationally this year. So we begin with the men's Garuda team at the 2023 Asian Cup finals, which was held in Qatar in January this year. Grouped together with Iraq, Japan, and fellow Southeast Asian national team Vietnam, under the 24-team format, all the Garudas needed to do is to secure at least 3 points to be certain of getting a place in the knockout rounds. And attaining a place in the knockout rounds, whether it's in the round of 16 or the quarterfinals in a 16-team format, it had been very elusive for Indonesia since they made their Asian Cup finals debut in 1996. And for 5 successive editions following their debut, they have attained a few notable scalps, whether it was a 2-1 win over Qatar in China 2004 or a 2-1 win over Bahrain in 2007 finals on home soil. There were highlights, but when it came to crossing the line to reach the knockout stages, that had been elusive. And moreover, it was 17 years since Indonesia last played in the Asian Cup finals, and maybe even pushing back even further, 20 years since they last qualified for the tournament outright. And given the increased number of teams in the finals and having Vietnam in the same group as them, attaining those 3 points is possible. But could they? After opening their campaign with a 1-3 defeat to Iraq, an opponent they had faced earlier last year in the second round of World Cup qualifiers, the next match between Vietnam was a do-or-die clash for both nations in an all-ASEAN affair. And sure enough, it did produce the typical brand of Southeast Asian football we were familiar with. Tight, at times very loose defending, at times rather very more open play than they would have done against more organized teams in Asia. But eventually the Garudas prevailed with a 1-0 win over their regional rivals, thanks to an Asnawi Mangkualam penalty in the second half. And even though they lost 1-3 to Japan in their final group game, they had to wait until the final day of group matches, where their closest challenger for the top 4 third place finishers to reach the round of 16 were yet to be confirmed. So it was when Oman failed to beat Kyrgyzstan in their final group game in Group F. Only then did the Garudas finally cross over the line into the knockout rounds for the first time. And you can see the jubilant celebrations of the players as they race into Shin Tae-yong's room after that final whistle, because really, they have never believed that they could reach this far. But under the South Korean, they really did push to be among the top 16 teams in Asia in this Asian Cup. And even though they lost 4-0 to Australia in the next round and exited the tournament, it was more than good enough. For the Garudas have now reached a new milestone in the Asian Cup and in this Asian Cup in Qatar, and having eventually secured qualification for the next edition of the Asian Cup in 2027. We do look forward to see how Shin Tae-yong's Garudas progress and probably up another level in the continental international team competition. So after the Asian Cup journey ended with glory in defeat, you can say glory in defeat, despite the 4-0 whitewash by Australia. Having reached the next round of the knockout stages of the Asian Cup for the first time gave the Garudas a lot of momentum going forward into the remaining 4 matches of the second round of World Cup Asian qualifying for the 2026 North America edition. And in those remaining 4 games, they met Vietnam again home and away and defeated them 1-0 at home and 3-0 in Hanoi, and as well achieving a crucial 1-0, 2-0 win over the Philippines in their final group match to secure a place in the final round of World Cup qualifying for the first time. And achieving that yet again is another first for Indonesian football, for Indonesia have never reached the final round of World Cup qualifying ever in their history. The only time they appeared in the World Cup was as Dutch East Indies in 1938, but even then in that context, you can say that there wasn't much in the way of qualification, even if there were, when opponents could withdraw without facing any sanction or penalty. At that time, in the bygone era, it was an automatic route for the Dutch East Indies. But this time for Indonesia, it's different. Competition has toughened up over the decades, and for them to actually cross over the line yet again, setting yet another new milestone for setting a new standard for international men's football in, you can say, for Indonesia, and becoming the third Southeast Asian team after Thailand and Vietnam to reach the final round of World Cup qualifying. That was exceptional. And moving on to that stage, which Indonesia were grouped in Group C alongside, once again, Japan, but also with Middle Eastern side Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, China, and once again, Australia. So when you have such a tough lineup, especially when you are up against World Cup, you can say regular World Cup appearances from Japan and Australia, on paper this look an almighty difficult task. But yet, in those results that they achieved, 3 successive draws against Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Bahrain, the last one rather controversially, as the Garudas were poised to win their first ever World Cup final qualifying round match ever, but only to be denied when Bahrain scored in the 9th minute of injury time when the ball was raised up towards the end of regulation time. It was supposed to be 6, but the Omani referee, the rather notorious Omani referee Omar Al-Kaf, he made it until 9 minutes, and after that goal, the equalizer was done. That was almost immediately when he blew the final whistle. Cue those protests. Cue the protestations from the coaching staff, from the players, and also from the fans. Admittedly, there was nothing AFC or FIFA could do, but still, it showed already that Indonesia are now serious players in the final round of World Cup qualifying. They are not here to make up the numbers. They are not here to be whitewashed by the tougher regional opponents in East Asia, Middle East, or Central Asia. They are there to play and mix with the big boys. And where that is concerned, part of that dramatic progress Indonesia has made this year has also been down to the increase in heritage players who were brought into the national team over the past, you can say, 8-9 months. So moving on to the naturalization, or rather the induction of heritage players. When Shin Tae-yong announced his 26-man squad for the Asian Cup finals in Qatar in January, 8 of them were naturalized players. 8 of them. By the time the final round World Cup qualifying began, actually, we can say it was almost a new look team, particularly with the entrance of the now captain of the Garuda side, Jay Itzes, who plays for Venezia in Serie A, Major League Soccer's goalkeeper Martin Pace, are among the notable additions. I think among the notable 9 additions to bolster the talent depth and quality of the Garuda squad. And this gave Shin Tae-yong new weapons, new choices to look at, and to formulate new tactical formulas that would fit into his favourite wing-back 5-3-2 or 2 or 3-5-2, depending on how you do it. But it favoured the way how Shin Tae-yong wants his teams to play against those stronger sides in the final round of World Cup qualifiers. And those early draws showed that this naturalization process of the heritage players, it has helped tremendously in raising the quality and also enhance the playing ability and tactical nuance of the Garudas as a whole, needed when they come up against tougher opponents from the Middle East. You can say make them more comparable with the Middle Eastern opponents, and also perhaps to China, where they suffered an unfortunate 1-2 defeat away. But unfortunately, they were no match for the world-class Asian side Japan, who steamrolled them 4-0 even without putting on some of the best European-based players on the pitch. Still, Indonesia did finally get their first win of the final round of World Cup qualifying with a sensational 2-0 win over Saudi Arabia in November. That result has now pushed Indonesia to 3rd in the table, and if you take away runaway leaders Japan, who are almost certain to make yet another appearance in the World Cup finals in USA, Mexico and Canada in 2026, the remaining 5 teams are separated by just 1 point, and Indonesia are above the other 3 teams, who are also on 6 points, on better goal difference and also more goals scored, even with the better goal difference. So that has allowed Indonesia to stay within pace of a second automatic spot. Remember, in the final round of World Cup qualifying, there are 3 groups in Asia, and only in the expanded 48 team format, the top 2 teams of each group qualify automatically to North America. And with the final round of World Cup qualifying set to end in June next year, Indonesia have 4 more games to make it count. And although that includes one very difficult trip to Japan, but at home to China, Bahrain, and it's still possible. And with results going either way, when it comes to play against one another, you can see that upgrade in quality has allowed Indonesia to be very competitive and allowed Shin Tae-yong to flex more technical muscle and nuance compared to how maybe if he had only those local players, he would have been more constrained and more compact. No offense to the local based players, but as I've mentioned in one previous video after ASEAN Championship game, sometimes when your local quality is this limited, even if you have exceptional individuals like Marcelino Ferdinand, Rizky Widow, Witan Sulaiman, or Pramata Ahal, and even Asnawi Mangkualam, you need others who are able to raise the quality up, and the level of degree of, you can say, raising in standards led by Jay Izzes and the quality they showed. Take away that 0-4 defeat to Japan at home, Indonesia have been up to the mark, and it showed that the naturalization process of those heritage players, the quality ones with Indonesian blood, has been working very well. And a lot of credit has to be given to Eric Toh here, the PSSI president, for speeding up this process. I know it's controversial to the point that rival Southeast Asian fans have been calling it what? Netherlands B, Netherlands C, and all these things. But the Indonesian fans are not caring at this moment. They don't care. They know that they still have the World Cup to look forward to. The World Cup dream is still alive. And they know that as long as you reach the World Cup finals, nobody in the world is going to think about how many ASEAN Championship titles you have won in the past. In fact, for the record, Indonesia have still not yet won any ASEAN Championship title. But I think it's understandable from the Indonesian fans' logic that the World Cup dream is a lot bigger, and they want to live in that moment. And however long Shin Tae-yong is going to stay in the Garuda's hot seat, they want to enjoy this moment as long as it can last. And obviously having international experience with the senior national team helps when those young seniors are also included in the under-23 squad when the under-23 Asian Cup finals yet again held in Qatar kick off in May this year. Well, this time grouped together with Australia, Jordan, and also I think it's Australia, Jordan, and Qatar. They lost to the hosts at the beginning, but with that experience that they have in the squad, including a few naturalized players who were naturalized in the first half of the year, I think especially in the early March and April, they were included in squad as long as they are age eligible. They defeated Australia, they defeated Jordan to advance into the quarterfinals. And this is, to note, the under-23's first ever appearance in the under-23 Asian Cup finals. They've never qualified at this tournament before since it began in, I think, 2018 or 2016. Yeah. And this also serves as a final round of World Cup qualifying in this format ever since this tournament began. And who was next in the quarterfinals? South Korea. Yet again, another milestone is achieved. In South Korea's favor, when after a trailing 2-2 draw, the Garudas ousted the Koreans on penalties, ending the South Koreans' journey to successive Olympics for the first time since perhaps 1984, when they failed when the young Taeguk Warriors did not appear in the Olympic Games men's football tournament. Then you got the semi-finals. It's like as long as you get the top 3 positions, you reach either the final or finish third in the Asian Cup under-23 tournament, they will go to the Paris Olympics. But unfortunately, Uzbekistan were too good for them in the semi-finals, losing 0-2. Iraq in the third place playoff, the young Garudas took the lead, only to succumb to them in extra time. So that leaves them with, you can say, in 1 week's time, after 2nd of May, when the third place playoff was played, a playoff with the African team for the final spot of the 16-team men's football tournament for the Olympics. And beforehand, Indonesia only played in one Olympic Games men's football tournament before, and that was in 1956 when participation was voluntary then. But this time, 1 week was, I think, too short a time for transition, and being denied a few key players in the process because their European-based clubs would not release them further. Indonesia eventually succumbed to a 0-1 defeat against a Guinea side who, unlike their opponents, Guinea had a number of players who were released from their own French clubs to play in this playoff at Clairefontaine, and unfortunately, it ended in agony. It ended in a red card for Shin Tae-yong, and it was disappointing that the Indonesia under-23 failed to qualify for the Paris Olympics, but a 4th place finish, beating South Korea to eliminate them from Olympic qualification. These yet again were major milestones that Shin Tae-yong has done. You can say for the Indonesian, miracles that even other foreign national coaches have not achieved before. But these were miracles. These were achievements that Shin Tae-yong has brought to the national under-23 side to top up from what he has done with the Garudas, the main men's national team, in both the Asian Cup and final rounds of World Cup qualifying. Nothing short of sensational, and I think for the men's football side, it has been something worth celebrating. And to wrap things up, I think I will give a quick mention on a shout out to the women's national team who have had a good 2024 as well. I mean, they have hired this Japanese coach Satoru Mochizuki, who was an assistant coach in the Japan women's national team that won the Women's World Cup in 2011, which inspired an entire generation of young female footballers to play the game. But to come straight to the point, his role in coming to Indonesia was to help revive the Indonesian women's soccer team, and what he has done was to blood in a lot of young female Indonesian players, but also, like the men, have a few heritage players who were also blooded in to play for the squad. And when Indonesia won the AFF Women's Cup in Laos earlier in November, 4 of the 23 women's squad were naturalized as heritage players. Majority of them were born in the United States, and they have one exceptional striker in the making, even though she's only 15 years old. Claudia Schulnerman. She's currently with the girls team at German side Hamburger SV, and she's only 15 years old, and she scored her 2 international goals against Singapore in May this year in the female Garuda's 5-1 win over the Lionesses, which also happened to be the Japanese coach's first game in charge. And since then, she has gone on to score this year in 10 appearances alone, 6 goals. And preparation for the well, you can say AFF Women's Cup has not been the best, but if you put it in retrospective, when Indonesia were beaten 0-15 by the Netherlands in their final friendly before the tournament, you have to remember in context that the Netherlands are one of the best women's national teams in the world right now. And when you put Indonesia to compete with them, it's really, the difference is as clear as night and day. Very, very clear contrast. But this defeat has given them a lot of valuable lessons, not just for the coach but also for the players, on how they ought to approach the game, how to approach the tournament, and how to regain themselves into the final round of the ASEAN Women's Championship that is set to be held next year. And Indonesia won 3 of their 4 games, including the semi-final against Singapore, which they won 3-0, and also beating Cambodia in the final to secure one of the 3 spots and to finish as champions. To wrap up, you can say a fantastic year for both the men's and the women's side in international football. And I think there's plenty to look forward to for the 2 national teams in the coming year, especially with 4 men's World Cup final qualifying matches remaining, where they are still within a shot of qualifying for 2026. And for the women's side, there's still the ASEAN Women's Championship and the SEA Games, Southeast Asian Games to look forward to. And also for the men's under-23 national team, yes, the Southeast Asian Games where they defend the gold medal. Like this coming year, which is going to come to pass, 2025 is yet, it's going to be another exciting chapter in the recent history of Indonesian football on the international stage. And I look forward to see how the Garudas and their female counterparts are going to perform on the pitch next year.